Welcome to IMGROUP presentation related to FINREP COREP reports. It's a good chance to check out what's the latest news related to the regulations that are about to be implemented and imposed across financial industry of UK. Let's begin with what COREP and FINREP acronyms mean. Its first one is common reporting and the second financial reporting. As in every newly imposed framework, there are certain steps that need to be undertaken in order for a successful development to be accomplished. We first need to identify the framework, then analyze it and specialize it with specific requirements which fit our organization. Then deliver the specifications for development, review the results and potentially involve in order to improve it. As such, for COREP and FINREP, we will have to follow the relative steps. So, in order to provide the identification, we're going to make an introduction of the COREP and FINREP, then the timing that has been triggered, the key objectives, which is more or less the analysis of it, the templates and formats, which plays the role of the specification, the challenges which are need to be faced during the development, and how can IMGROUP can assist in the offering. So as an introduction, we first need to understand what COREP and FINREP are and what's all this fuss about them lately. They are just reports, simple to say, but we shall see what do they contain later on. For the moment, a high-level depiction is that FINREP relates mostly to financial data, whereas COREP is being withdrawing the same kind of information viewed from the prisma of risk. They were initially inspired by a supranational authority, Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, then refined by regulatory bodies such as European Banking Association and imposed through legislation by the European Union on a higher level through CRDs, the well-known CRDs 1, 2, and later on 3, and the forthcoming 4th, and by laws from the local authorities. Are they new? No, they are not new. They were pre-existing at least since 2007 and onwards. The change that is being brought forward relates to the scope. The scope of the reporting has been broadened a lot with Basel III. Continuing our introductions, we need to justify why there is this radical increase in the specific reports' popularity. The most important reason is that during the 2008 turmoil, it was made apparent that unless there is a single prudential rulebook for reporting across the European Union countries, we cannot achieve a harmonized environment. That said, if national authorities apply specific discretions in the interpretation of the mandate, they create impediments in a globally equal playing field. All this frustration during the crisis was perceived by the public. So at the micro level, there were worries involved about customers' deposits and their investments, and this added up to a snowball effect. So what Basel III and subsequently COREP and FINREP are trying to depict is an increased of capital left aside for absorbing during stress periods, better asset evaluation to avoid decreased prices of assets during massive sell-off, so on and so forth. Next slide presents, let's say, a roadmap of the major milestones that are yet to come in order for the mandate to be imposed across UK. I won't get into more details. The truth is that this plan has been reviewed quite a lot of times during the past and moved forward. There was majorly due to the politics around it in order to succeed a more balanced mandate that the banks could comply. Let's continue by examining some of the pre-existing gaps that COREP and FINREP were challenged to bridge. First of all, we already mentioned about the cross-jurisdictional gap stemming from the fact that financial institutions were called to comply with local reporting mandates and the framework translation, which create a non-equal level playing field. Additionally to that, there were some interpretation inconsistencies which were resulting in not meeting the actual reporting requirements. This was mostly due to the fact that the financial institutions were called to resolve the requirement in a more tactical rather than a strategical point of view. Finally, the lack of a golden source system such as data warehouse create the depiction of multiple versions of truth that suited the business unit, let's say, need, such as collection versus risk, finance versus sales and marketing, so on and so forth. So there was an integration gap. The key objectives for bridging these gaps by imposing the framework was to result in a harmonized reporting across regulatory authorities and moving towards a more globalized regulatory environment. Having common rules for calculating risk-weighted assets across all authorities and have a consistent treatment of types of approach and models used to calculate capital requirements. Consistent doesn't mean equal. So, for example, depending on the credit risk, risk-weighted asset level of sophistication of each institution, standardized, foundational IRB, advanced IRB, the formulas may be varying per institution. However, they will be based against common rules. But what are the means in order to succeed these key objectives? First of all is to establish a central repository in order to introduce predefined reference tables for example, NACE codes for industry groups, NACE codes for currencies, the legal entity identifier, a newly introduced initiative which targets to identify enterprises across the world. Afterwards is to establish a data point model for report submission, to have a common reporting format for the submission, which is the XBRL. We shall see what does this mean later on. This will facilitate the peer review of the regulators and audit reports and progress review and framework compliance reports will be easily being produced. Additionally to that, the data can be easily shared across national authorities and supervisory bodies, sometimes even across the financial institutions, in order to improve both data quality and layout and content of the information being reported. And here's a sample of the template for COREPs, specifically the CRSA, as indicated at the left top of the spreadsheet and the slide, which is the acronym from Credit Risk Standardized Approach. We shall see that there's not just a single report that has to be produced. It is also apparent, and we will go into further detail later on, that this report is multidimensional, meaning that there are various granularity level of information being provided or actually being requested for the specific report. There is, for example, the total exposures that then breaks down into on and off balance sheet items, and further breakdown per risk weight. The columns of the report relates to inflows or outflows, and the exposure types, so on and so forth, as the report progresses further down. Now let us see what do COREP reports contain, at least on a high level. To begin with, they contain calculated risk-related attributes, such as the risk-weighted assets per portfolio or even per loan, and exposure level, the capital adequacy required for the overall portfolio of an institution, or broken down in a granular level, the probability of default used by the acronym PD, the loss given default with the acronym LGD, and the exposure default with the acronym EAD. It also contains mapped static values, meaning the values that have to be mapped against the source information of an institution. The most commonly used and characteristic examples are the market participant types, the collateral types, and the exposure types. There are also some financial figures as retrieved from the balance sheet and the profit and loss, depending on the sort of information of the institution. And all of these figures do cover in different spreadsheets, in different distinct reports, all the risk areas, the overall risk areas, such as the credit, the counterparty credit risk, the market risk, along with liquidity and the operational risk. They do contain other sort of information which resides mostly on the, in a sense, demographic essence rather than on the financial, and these fall under the category of Pillar 2. Characteristic examples are the industry groups, the exposure size, some stress testing scenarios being applied by the institution, and so on and so forth. So just by listing them out, we can understand that not only COREP reports are complex, but are extensive as well. And the information is being provided at a granular level for all the common data items across the template. Totally, they sum up to 32,000 fields that potentially need to be populated. Of course, this relates to the applicability for institution. Nonetheless, they need to be at least reviewed, analyzed, and defined whether they are applicable or not. Let us see now a sample template of FINREP, and I'm saying sample because as you shall see from the very bottom of the spreadsheet being provided, there are several reports per spreadsheet that, depending on their applicability for each institution, have to be delivered. The granular level that COREP requires the information remains for FINREP as well. The dimensions requested are also a lot and variable within a single report. Now, as far as the content of FINREP reports is concerned, as we already mentioned, they do contain relative items as COREP, seen though from a different perspective, seen through the prism of financial rather than risk data. The target values relate though to the same classifications, to the same static target values. FINREP reports are almost equal extensive, such as COREP, again subject to the applicability for its institution, and do require complex mappings and calculations as well. Multidimensional. It is a fancy word that takes meaning though by presenting again this sample CRSA COREP report. As we shall see, there is the first dimension that contains the overall exposures broken down per inflow, outflow, and exposure type. Then there is a second dimension which contains the same figure broken down into on and off balance sheet exposure and so on and so forth. Finally, there is a third dimension which contains the same information broken down per risk weight, since the specific report applies, as we've already talked about, for the standardized approach. These dimensions remain steady, however, plotting figures into them is rather complex because the report is a snapshot, a point in time report by the end of month, but figures keep on changing as loans mature, as collateral values fluctuate, so on and so forth. And this is one part of the complexity for successfully completing a COREP report or a FINREP report. Let us now see what does the delivery of the reports into XBRL format offers. It first of all reduces taxonomy debugging, both for any institution and the regulatory authorities. It has better control over the input by facilitating also the cross-return validation requirements across the different spreadsheets of the reports, and facilitates the understanding of COREP FINREP reports taxonomies across all supervisory authorities in EU and global wise. By delivering them automatically through a designated website, it also limits the manual data entry and its manipulation, and facilitates and sets in stone the deadlines which have to be met by the institutions. We already talked about the static taxonomies being provided by the framework and the institution needs to comply with. The most characteristics ones are listed out in this slide, such as the market participant type, the exposure and the collateral types, the industry groups, so on and so forth. If you want further detail on the market participant type, for example, we can mention that there are certain major categories such as the retail, small medium enterprise or small business, banking, sovereigns, PSEs, or the acronym of public sovereign entities, regulatory European bodies such as the Multilateral Development Bank, etc. We now need to identify and list out all the major challenges, or most of them at least, that need to be faced by a financial institution in order to validly and accurately deliver COREP and FINREP reports. It is not just reports, we've mentioned this a couple of times, and by now the justification is apparent. There are calculated figures that need or might need to be reported differently under a different scope by, let's say, different departments of the bank or financial institution, such as days past due calculation being reported both by the collections department or the risk department might differ. These reports and their delivery need to be synchronized and in parallel assure that the data integrity is of an excellent quality. Furthermore, the taxonomies, the static ones at least we've just mentioned about, sometimes require advanced ETL mappings to meet the target values. One of the most important challenges a financial institution has to face for delivering COREP and FINREP, if not the most crucial, is the reconciliation process that has to be done on several levels, such as reconciliation against general ledgers published audited reports, which are being, let's say, published on a quarterly basis, compared to the monthly FINREP reports which are being required. Reconciliation also has to be made apart from the general ledger against the source data, which means that unless there is a, let's say, common data repository such as a data warehouse to ensure data integrity, validity, ease of extraction and use, and there is integration, this task will be really difficult to be achieved. There is also some historical requirements mentioning models calculation. This can go up to 7 years for the moment. So having a robust IT infrastructure is also important for delivering risk and finance reports. There is a relevant document published by Basel Committee providing guidelines on the IT data governance, which is also being audited under the Pillar 3. But are we focusing on the IT perspective of the framework and COREP FINREP reports just because IMGROUP is an IT related company? Apparently not. The most valid justification on that is a study European Union assigned to global important financial institutions related to their risk-weighted assets. These risk-weighted assets fluctuate between 15 to 45% of the overall gross assets of each institution. Well, there goes the common framework being based on these percentages and these deviations. At least this is what some claim. There are reasons for that. There are reasons for different modeling formulas and approaches, different sophistication on each institution's models, different portfolio breakdown. I mean, it differs if you're a mortgaged bank compared to an asset investment firm. And it also differs based on the local jurisdiction interpretations. But even if these aforementioned reasons are excluded, there would still be difference. And this difference will be triggered from the data manipulation and the data management, to put it politically correct. Data quality matters. In several cases, it affects the risk-weighted assets, such as having accurate sales figures for the companies being your customers. Collateral management system is also important, and having the information on how to allocate on an optimized way your collaterals, how to calculate accurately and optimized either on a portfolio or an individual basis your provisions, and so more other items that data management matters, and that's why IMGROUP focus on data quality as well. But how could IMGROUP assist a financial institution for timely delivering these reports with the appropriate quality? It's not just the extensive experience on the data warehouse techniques on an end-to-end process from the IT infrastructure perspective up until the user reports being delivered. It is also based on experienced staff which has previous engagements and ownership of Basel II and Basel III reports. And there's also the know-how on advanced data management techniques in order to deliver or to improve the efficiency of an ETL, which is required, and in some cases, as we mentioned, is rather sophisticated for meeting the target static taxonomies. But apart of all the aforementioned, IMGROUP can enable a more strategic view of the framework instead of tactically delivering the reports. This can be done through an IM framework which is being applied or can be applied to a prospective customer. Based on this diagram, we can identify and segment both financial institution responsibility and IMGROUP area of expertise, and how these two can be combined through a process to deliver the end result. We begin by saying that a financial institution needs to identify the regulatory framework and have knowledge on that. On the other hand, IMGROUP would need and actually has deep knowledge on the IT infrastructure requirements that need to be in place. By collaborating and by analyzing and consulting on Basel II frameworks, a roadmap strategy can be written up. Then the financial institution would identify the reporting requirements, and these would be delivered and analyzed through a data gap analysis based on the already available reporting data set containing all the data elements which are required for such reports. Then the financial institution will provide the blueprint of the data source the data resides on, and IMGROUP would either deliver data warehouse functionality setup or at least have a target database that can perform the advanced ETL techniques that are required to reach the target values. Producing the reports in the XBRL format is, let's say, at the fourth stage of the whole process. From the one side, the bank should know what regulatory capital calculations should be applied, and on the other hand, having applied these, let's say, calculations based on the regulation and producing the results, these have to be plotted into the reports, the actual reports, COREP and FINREP, with the, as already mentioned, XBRL format. But is it just about producing the reports? As we already said, no, it's not. The bank, the financial institution in general, needs to be aware of how to use these reports to improve its day-to-day risk management activities. This is actually a mandate explicitly stated in the regulatory frameworks called use test. So the bank should identify the areas that need improvement in their current infrastructure and make use of the reports and the results that have been produced through them. In that fifth level, let us call it as such, of cooperation and improvement, IMGROUP can deliver either generic project management services or even more specific requirements analysis, specification analysis, and delivering functionality and enhancements into core banking systems. Does the process end? No, this is iterative, because once the first stage has been completed, we need to reevaluate the whole framework, or even examine whether there are any amendments of the framework as provided and imposed by the regulators. But what do we need to keep the process of improving our risk management framework iterative? Well, the most accurate argument on that is based on an influential article called Black Swans, and actually describes that the next catastrophic event for the financial sector, or generally speaking, will come outside the confidence level of its bank's model, meaning that it will come from an area which is not thoroughly analyzed and risk managed. Thank you for allocating your valuable time seeing this presentation. I hope you find it interesting. For any further information, please address to our relevant departments through our website. Thank you very much.